Hello artists, and welcome to Creativity Time with Julia Major. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Today we're going to be doing the Battle of the Art Supplies. So the way this works is I'm going to show 3 different art materials or mediums, and then I'm going to pick which one I would have if I could only have one for the rest of time. Some quick thoughts before we get started though. There is no correct answer on this. Art is something that is subjective, which means that one person may really love a painting and it might not speak at all to another person. But that doesn't mean that we can't use facts to back up the opinions we have and to discuss things. That's what makes it interesting. So you don't have to give up your opinion as an artist. An opinion is a good thing to have, but remember that your opinion isn't the same thing as a fact, but you can use facts to back that opinion up. And that's what I'm going to be doing. And in fact, if you absolutely love an art supply that I eliminate in this battle or sort of match between art supplies, that's wonderful. That means that you're a different artist than me. And of course, truthfully, if I could have all of these art supplies, I would. And then one other final thing is just to say that art materials are not what make the artist. There are great artworks that have been made with just pencil, with tin foil, with bits of trash. So don't feel like if you don't have all these supplies, you can't make art, because that's simply not true. But let's get into it and have some fun. And of course, this discussion is helpful for developing that studio habit called developing craft, because it's helping you get to know what the properties of different artistic mediums and tools are. So the first one is a low temp glue gun, clear tape. You can also consider this to be Scotch tape. We'll combine those two. And tacky glue. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised what I pick. My answer is definitely tacky glue, because tacky glue is, as the name says, all-purpose. It can be used for wood, it can be used for cardboard, it's very strong. I also like, compared to Elmer's, which I didn't have in this battle, but compared to a traditional Elmer's school glue, it's less liquidy, which I love. So if you're taking your artwork home and you like tilt it a little, everything isn't going to slide off. It's not dry immediately, but it immediately sticks in some way. One of the things I don't like about tacky glue is that sometimes the lid gets glued on. But what I like to do is just have a little bit of newspaper and then pour yourself a puddle and then use Q-tips. So it gives you really nice control with the tacky glue, and you don't have to deal with the lid getting sealed at the top. It still can get kind of stuck here, but you can pull that off, but you don't have to deal with all these clogs at the top or coming out too fast or too slowly. The low temp glue gun is super useful and is a tool that I love. It can burn you, but that's not really my biggest problem with it. Burns from a low temp glue gun are actually pretty minor. What I don't like about it is, you have to be working somewhere that has a plug. Also, it's not especially strong. It's stronger on some things than others, but low temp compared to high temp glue guns, it's a less strong glue gun, and often it's almost always going to be less strong than tacky glue. What is nice about it is it's really good in a situation where you need something quick. And then we've got the clear tape. The thing about clear tape is sometimes it gets called invisible. It's not. We can see it. It's shiny. It shows up. I don't want that visible on my artwork. So I end up doing tape squares, which takes quite a bit of time. The advantage of tape is really that it is quick, but then a tape square takes more time unless you're using a double-sided tape. The tape can go yellow is an issue. Sometimes it's hard to find the start of the tape, but the biggest thing is tape is mainly, almost anything can be an art supply or medium, but tape is mainly intended for more industrial uses, more uses in other workplaces other than art. And so it's really for speed and getting something up there, not for making it look that nice. So I rarely go to this is like a packing tape. I rarely go to a packing tape or Scotch tape, but I do use it sometimes. So I'm temporarily putting something up on a wall or to remind myself of something, or just wanting to stick something temporarily and then move it as an example. It has its place, but by and large, I'm gonna go with a glue. Next battle. This one is a much tougher battle. I started with the most easy and obvious for me. We have tempera paint, acrylic paint, and oil paint. This is something that I get questions from artists on all the time. they know that I really love to paint in my free time, and they ask me what kind of paint is best. So first off, like we said, there really is no answer. There are painters who love and use all kinds of paints and will argue in favor of all of them. But for me, my winner is very clear. It is acrylic, especially heavy-bodied acrylic paint. I love acrylic paint. In the studio, in the shared studio in our classroom though, I'm all about Premier Tempera paint. And for all of these, I will put, if I think a brand is important, I'm not sponsored, I'm not even doing Amazon links or anything, but if there's a brand that I highly recommend, I will put it down below. And I really like this particular tempera paint, and I'll get to why in a little bit. But why my choice is acrylic is because it's so versatile. It's a little bit of a cheat almost, because I think when you say acrylic, it can mean so many different things, which is why I also wanted to show you this is a different brand of acrylic that I also really like. This one's Liquitex. This is Lucas. And in both of them, they have heavy bodied and then they have thinner or soft body paints. That's called the viscosity, how thick a paint is. And so really acrylic can act really similar to oil paint, and it can act really similar to watercolor. You can water it down. It's a little less archival that way, but you can also use mediums and stuff. So you can get a watercolor effect with acrylic, and you can also get super thick with acrylic. And that's a huge reason I like it, because I like to paint what's called impasto, or a really thick paint. And oil paint's very known for that. But if you painted with oil paint as thick as I sometimes do with acrylic, it could take many, many years to fully dry. Literally years. So that's one thing I like about acrylic. And I absolutely loathe the smell and way that turpentine, which is one of the things that is typically used to make oil paints work, and a medium that you use with it, makes me feel. It just makes me feel icky. It's not really great for anyone, but I seem to be particularly prone to just feeling ugh when I use it. So that's one reason I like acrylic as well. And there's a common misconception that acrylic doesn't last as long as oils. Oils date back much further than acrylics, but actually in tests, because acrylic is a recent technology, in tests they've shown that a high quality acrylic can withstand things like sun and pollution and just everyday things that paintings are exposed to longer and better than oils can. And the word for that is being more archival. So acrylic, a good acrylic, is actually more archival than oil paint, and a lot of people are surprised by that. Some reasons that people really like oils though, first off, like I said, the history. Oils have been used by great and renowned painters. We have oils that are hundreds of years old, so people love that. There's a luminous, shiny quality that oils can have, although you can find ways to get a very similar quality with acrylic. And also, like I said, the thickness of it, it's a little different than acrylic, and if you're used to that, the heavy-bodied nature of oil, some people just like the exact feel that oils has. And then one of the biggest things is oils takes longer to dry, which can be viewed as an advantage or a disadvantage, but many artists like the fact that you can keep working on an oil painting for quite a while and fixing things. Acrylic takes longer to dry than tempera, but it takes much less time than oil. So now we've got the tempera paint. Tempera is actually, you may be surprised to find, the oldest of these paints. Not in this exact version, but artists were using tempera before oil, because at one point oil was a new technology. So, and it used to be made from egg. This tempera paint isn't though. So if you have an allergy to egg, that's not a problem here. What I don't always like about it is it can be kind of dull. What's awesome about it is it cleans out of brushes so quickly and so easily. It cleans off of like surfaces like tables so easily. This particular one is the Crayola Premier Tempera, and so it actually does stain outfits, but there are some less colored temperas that won't stain outfits, that are washable. But I do, for the classroom art studio, this is my favorite because it's so fun to play around with. Also, it's less expensive. And if you want the freedom to stretch and explore, you don't want to have to be worrying about something being super expensive. So for the studio, tempera wins, but for my own personal art, I absolutely love having acrylic. So the last two, we have, this is the hardest category for me. by far the hardest category. I'm so glad that I don't actually have to choose. Watercolor pencils, water-soluble oil pastels, and normal oil pastels. I really loved oil pastels as a kid. I remember trying them for the first time, or one of the first times, in art class, and them really speaking to me, and I think that was a good sign that later I would fall in love with acrylic paint, because I think there's a lot of similarities to how they blend and the colors and all of those things. So I love oil pastels, and I love this particular oil pastel by Crayola, the neon ones, because I think they should have a better cover. It really doesn't show how neon these actually are. So I really recommend these, and they glow under black light. But I'm gonna go with the water soluble ones because these are Reeves, but I like still the Crayola brand. There's Crayola Portfolio, but Reeves is fine too. There's many good brands of water soluble oil pastels. But essentially you get a watercolor paint and an oil pastel in one. It can't do everything a watercolor can do in terms of movement, but when you wet it, it acts like watercolor paint, and that's really cool. So I love that. The downside of the water soluble is I think it's a little less creamy, and then also the big thing is just sometimes you want to use an oil pastel as a resist for watercolor paints or whatnot, and obviously if it's water soluble, it can't do that. So I was actually really tempted by the normal oil pastels for that reason. Depending on what other mediums I would get with this, my answer might be different. The watercolor pencils, it's surprising that I didn't pick them, because honestly, I think if I was to just sort of randomly give an art supply to an artist that I didn't know, I was told somehow, like, you have to pick an art supply for one artist, you don't know them, that's the only thing they can use for the rest of their life, I would probably pick this. This is Ergosoft brand, but I honestly have never found a watercolor pencil that I didn't think was good. I don't think brand is that important on this. But it's great because you can use them like a normal colored pencil, and then you can wet them and make parts appear more like watercolor. You can also dip them into the water and use them like that. So they're extremely versatile, and they're a great thing if you're going on a trip and you can sort of only bring one art supply. This is kind of like a paint set and a coloring set in one. And last but not least, something that may not shock the artists that know me, but I think would surprise just the average person, what I'll pick on this one. So here is a battle of the scissors. We have the Canary Scissors, which are particularly made, and this is a tool, by the way. This is not a medium, this is a tool. They are made to cut cardboard. They cut like this, not like this. They cut like this. They're really great. We've got your sort of traditional scissors, large scissors. Sometimes people call these adult scissors. And then you've got your small scissors. And what I would pick is the small scissors. A lot of times people call these kid scissors. I never call them that because I use them as an adult. They're just a different kind of scissors. And why I would pick them is because they're better for detail work. I love to collage, and I love to cut out really tiny things with collages and do a lot of details, and that just isn't possible to do well with a big scissors like this, and especially it would not be very good with this. This can cut a lot of cardboards. It's just annoying and frustrating to do, so I would definitely recommend having more than one scissors, but if I was stuck with one, I just thought it was interesting to note that I think a lot of adults in particular would be surprised that I would pick what people often call the kid scissors, small scissors. It is very important to get a good quality brand on this though. So this one is Fiskars. I also like Scotch. I have gotten other brands before where they will actually like fall apart as you're cutting. They'll break apart if something is too thick. I think that may have happened to me once with the Fiskars, but overall I find them really good. So this is something where I find that the brand matters a little bit more. So that is the battle for today. I hope to have battles in the future. And just a reminder, like I said, all of these art supplies are wonderful. This is just a fun way to talk about the properties they have. And it's a fun thing that you can do with yourself to really think about, what do you like about different mediums? Why do they appeal to you? You know, what interests you about them, and how can you take what is strong about them and use that to your advantage? So it's a fun little exercise to do. So maybe you can play a battle with yourself, or maybe even with a friend over something like an online platform. Thank you for coming to Creativity Time with Julia Major. I hope that you had a really fun time. Like and subscribe and share with a friend, and have a very colorful day.